Welcome to the official Tennis.com podcast featuring professional coach and community leader, Kamau Murray.
Welcome to the Tennis.com podcast. I am your host, Kamau Murray, and we are here with, I don't care if she's not the current CEO of the USTA, but she will always be Big Sis and Madam President to me, Katrina Adams. Thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks, Kamau. It's always a pleasure to sit in front of you and have a little chit chat.
Well, you know, I don't normally wear a collared shirt. I normally wear a hoodie, but whenever I'm in your presence, I feel pressure to like button up, you know?
I thought there was something different when I logged on and you looked a little strange and the hoodie is missing. So yeah.
The collar, I was like, I gotta have a collar for Madam President because I know she's gonna be right.
Well, I actually wore a collar today, so it's all good. Good. I'm in good company.
So you and I grew up together. Well, let me say, we did not grow up together. I grew up admiring you. Grew up sort of on your heels. You know, you was on court 1 and I was on court 5. You were down there banging the ball, chipping, right? Back in that time, I was like, hey, who's that? Right? And you were like the legend of the club. Went to the same high school as you. You grew up on the west side, grew up on the south side. And it's rare at that time to be a black tennis player on either side, but we kind of had a good black mecca at the Hyde Park Racquetball Club. But tell me about growing up playing tennis on the west side and how that happened.
Well, it kind of happened in a sense of me stumbling on the sport. Every summer, the Martin Luther King Boys Club, which is on Washington Boulevard in Sacramento, had a summer activity. And so my brothers are 7-9 years older than me. And so they were part of the group, the core group, every year doing something different. And tennis happened to be the activity for that summer at Garfield Park, right off of Lake Street and Central Park. And so we was walking distance from home. And I was a tag-along sister. My parents were teachers. They taught summer school. So wherever my brothers went, I had to go. And I was only 6. So, I had to sit outside the fence for about 2 weeks and beg my way into the program because I was too young. It was for 9 to 18-year-olds. And I was 6, turning 7 that summer, but still I was 6. So begging and watching, I'm a visual learner. I could figure out what not to do. Balls going all over the place, over the fences. But I was really keen to want to learn. I was a tomboy. I had great hand-eye coordination already. So I finally got a chance to get out into the program. About 2 weeks into the program, it was 8 weeks. And at the end of the 8 weeks, I was the most improved player. And I got a little trophy. And that trophy is the only trophy from my junior days that has moved around the country with me from place to place, because that was kind of the beginning to my future in the sport. So it was fun playing, play with a lot of older people, men in particular, that were there at Garfield Park as I got older and started to play and, hanging out. Back in the day, you had to put your racket on the back of the fence to get in line. The winner stayed on, the loser came off. Right. Had fun with that. Started playing the Lake Meadows Tennis Club really the next summer. Joined a program over there, and it was cool. It was fun.
Man, let me tell you. So I meet at least one person a month from the west side, former cops, former firemen, former doc. Yeah, I talk Katrina. You know Katrina? You play tennis. You know Katrina? I talk Katrina. I swear you had 75 coaches who were from Garfield Park. If you played a set against them, they're taking a piece of credit for your career.
Absolutely. But you know what, Kamau? That's cool. I'm cool with that. You know why? Because all of those individuals helped mold me, helped develop me. They challenged me to be my best every time I stepped on the court. And the one cat, I cannot remember his name. I think we called him Red because he was, red bone, freckled, red hair. And he looked forward to me coming out there. This was back in the day when you had to kind of schedule, hey, I'll see you next week at 10. Right. No calendars and no phone calendar invites back then. But it was fun. And, my dad would take me around the corner, or my brothers would take me, we walked probably a 5-minute walk and to the courts. And I didn't think anything of it. But, I was, like I said, I was a tomboy. So I was always in there and competing. And didn't matter who you were, how old you were, what gender you were. I was ready to go.
So you mentioned Lake Meadows, and for anybody in Black tennis Chicago knows Lake Meadows was like the outdoor summer hub of tennis. You sit around, Bobo has a little barbecue grill, right? A convertible Mercedes with the food and charcoal in the back seat and a little barbecue grill, and they just sat around and watched the kids develop. And I think the significance of that was that everyone there was raising us, right? Giving us a ride home, giving you, they probably hadn't hit a ball in 5 years. They just come here just to talk smack and give you a little tip, little bit of tip here, a little bit of tip there, and it actually finds its way into your game. You know what I mean? Talk about Lake Meadows, Chris Scott, Tyrone, Dr. Cruzat.
Yeah, I mean, these were prominent figures in Black tennis in Chicago, but particularly at the club. Chris Scott was my coach. Tony Fox brought me to him. So it was Chris Scott, it was Tyrone Mason, who's like my big brother. Well, another one of those cats that would challenge me every single day that we could play until I finally started beating him. Marty Gould, Ted Cruzat, Bobo, Howard Bowling, Tex Richardson. I mean, it was all these older cats that were there. And, in summer camp, we'd be there from 8 a.m. till 8 p.m. We were there for 12 hours, right? Mm-hmm. And it wasn't just playing tennis, it was hanging out. The backgammon boards were there. If you lost, you had to drink a tennis ball can, the metal can back then of water without letting it drip, or you had to drink more. It was these fun times, but these were people that really looked over us. And the women were Beverly Coleman and Julia Steele and Ruth Leak and Hazel Bond and all these other people who were at the club, particularly on the weekends, but in the summer, there and watching over us and raising us and guiding us and supporting us.
I definitely credit Lake Meadows for like all of my development. Just sitting there being able to watch you guys, Todd Ockamy, Tron, Richie, Malcolm, Marty, just sit there and watching y'all bang the ball around. It was like, okay, same thing, visual learners. That part of just hanging out at the park, I think we got to get back in tennis.
Yeah.
Because I always say, you can't only be thinking about the game and learning when you're paying for the time. You got to be sitting there developing, absorbing some of it on your own. Otherwise, you'll never get good because you can't pay for every second, every minute on the court. So then you go to Whitney Young. Now, you're the reason I went to Whitney Young. Now, for everyone who doesn't know Whitney Young is like, at the time, the magnet school in Chicago. No matter where you lived in the city, I live far south, you live west, so it's closer to you. But you were going to take 5 buses to get to that school if you can get in.
That's right.
Michelle Obama went there, but I didn't care anything about that. It was like, well, Katrina went there and her racket is retired in the gym. I got to come there and like try to do the same thing on the boys' side. So now selective enrollment testing, et cetera, I don't know if I would get in today, but back then, we had a little help, right? Talk about Whitney Young and sort of like that environment, right? That's really like, say you choose your school, you choose your friends, right? And I think that school sets you up for your next move, which is Northwestern.
Yeah, Whitney Young was home. It was family. Many of my classmates are still dear friends of mine today that I keep in touch with. You know how it is. We have these Whitney Young all class reunions. And so it's not just my class of 85. I'm there mingling with people that were there before me and after. And it's a real sense of family and love from our fellow Dolphins. I got to Whitney Young for 2 reasons. One was academics, and you had to take a test, a place to get in. But 2, they had the best tennis team in the city. I know Kenwood would think differently, but back then, anyways. But Whitney Young was the top school, and I knew many of the players that were already on the team that were my age, because I entered school young, so my age group was already there, but I was 13. When I entered high school, interestingly enough. But maybe I was 14. I don't know. I was young. But it was competitive both on the court and off the court. And I was the one that, I got off the court. I got out of class and my dad was outside to pick me up to take me straight to practice. I didn't get to ride a public bus until I was 13. Until I was a junior, when I was 15. And I literally was taking that bus, down to State Street to jump on, what was this, number 63?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
Jefferson, yeah.
Number 6.
The Jeffrey bus, the 6, right?
Yeah.
And got off right there, 47th and Lake Park, and walked down to the club. So those are definitely fun memories, but it was really the people at Whitney Young and the teachers that were there supporting us, supporting me. I traveled a lot, so I was able to get these passes to either leave school early to go, somewhere up north or deep west, far west for tournaments on Fridays. But as long as I got my work in, that's all that mattered to them and really to my parents, because I couldn't afford to let my grades slip at any time if I wanted to stay in the sport.
And people who know Whitney Young is very athlete friendly. So Katrina, myself, Quentin Richardson, Michael Jordan's kids, Jaleel Okafor, all these athletes, great athletes, went to Whitney Young, and they believe in developing the whole person, both academically and athletic, especially if it's a way for you to pay for college. So that's that. And then you were the first Black to win state. So we can't gloss over that. You were the first African-American female to win an Illinois state title. And then Jerrica Boone, who also played at our club back in the day, was the second. Talk about that experience.
That was great. I mean, I won it my junior and senior year. So I won it back to back. I didn't know the significance of it at the time. When you're playing tennis and you're competing in tournaments week in and week out, for me, it was another tournament. I knew it was different because it was high school state and you're competing with all the kids all over the state. But the Chicago District Tennis Association was the strongest district in the state of Illinois. So I was basically playing girls that I was playing all along anyways. But it was kind of cool when you have, you're wearing your school colors or you have your teammates that are there cheering you on. And it was a much different feeling than just playing another tournament. That was even more evident for me in my senior year because I understood what it meant to be a high school state champion. And I actually think I won my senior year probably easier than I did the junior final. But those were fun times. It was cool to make history. I never got into sport or do anything to make history. You don't really know you're making history until it's done. Maybe nowadays they talk about it so much, through media and social media when things are about to happen. Kids are a lot more aware of it. But, I was just an innocent competitor out there trying to win tournaments. And so in the process, history was being made.
And historically, Northwestern always goes after the state champ. Like if you win the state championship in high school, Northwestern is going to try to get you, right? They have like the Matty Lips. I mean, I can probably name 7 or 8 Illinois state champs that end up going to Northwestern.
Right.
That how did you think about Northwestern prior to winning state, or was the coach standing at the back of the fence recruiting you and it was a last minute thing? And where else did you consider other than Northwestern?
So first part of that question, I practiced at TAM Tennis Club, which is in Niles, Illinois. And the men's team used to practice there. So I used to see all these guys coming in this beautiful purple, hooded sweats, every day, the days that I was there. I think I went to TAM maybe 2 or 3 days a week, but the team was always coming in. And so my coach, Rod Schroeder at the time, was always talking about Northwestern. And, because we're from Chicago, we would see them in the news. Back then, our basketball and football team was horrific. So we were more in the news for being and something than on the winning side. But I knew about the school. I also knew it was one of the top academic schools in the country. I actually wanted to go somewhere warm. Come on, man, we're from Chicago. It's freezing there.
Right.
I was thinking Florida, USC, UCLA, Texas. All of these were top schools. All of them were in warm climates. And, I knew I could get on the team and compete well and maybe be number one at some point. But Northwestern had an early edge because they knew that I was a senior. When I won state championship as a junior, she knew I was about to be a senior. And so she started softly recruiting me. No one else recruited me. Remember, I was 16 as a senior. So people thought I was a junior. They didn't know that. Only the Illinois schools knew that I was a senior or was going to be a senior after my junior year. And so they started recruiting me, Illinois, Northern Illinois, Northwestern. But Northwestern was, obviously a winner. It was number one in communications. I wanted to go into communications. They were top 10, top 8 in the nation as a team. I was like, yep, it's a good fit. I had a great recruiting trip. It's the only recruiting trip I went on. Because remember, no one else recruited me because no one was a senior. And this,
UCLA is kicking himself right now. Listening
yeah,
to
this is pre-Google, pre-Wikipedia. You didn't know how to get information on players back then. And I didn't know what the recruiting process was. I didn't know I could have picked up the phone and call these coaches around the country. I didn't even know how to get in touch with them. So that's how I really ended up at NU. And when I signed my letter of intent in April of my senior year, my mailbox was flooded with letters and the phone was ringing, and all of these schools that I wanted to go to and some I'd never heard of before started to recruit me because they realized I was a senior, but I'd already committed. I'm a woman of my word. And, it was kind of motivation for me that when I got to play these schools that didn't recruit me, it was extra motivation for me to go out there and kick their what. So
oh man.
so those were fun times, when you really look back and reflect, because we had the 18 indoors, which at the time was, for me, it was in Kansas City. And so I was a first year 18 and under, right? Entering, because I was 16, but my birthday. So all of the college coaches are there recruiting. No one came up to me. No one spoke to me. I didn't know I could have gone up to and coach and said, hey, I'm a senior. I'd love to go to your school because look, man, I'm from the west side of Chicago. We didn't, tennis wasn't our thing, right? We didn't really know how this system worked and the things you were supposed to do. I didn't have the guidance like these kids are online every day now, tennisrecruit.net and all this other stuff. So I was kind of, I felt horrible because I was like, why are they overlooking me? Why aren't they not speaking to me? Why are they speaking to the kid I just beat? I'm like, this is ridiculous. And it was really the first time that I felt that it could have been racism, because I was like, are they not, they don't want me because I'm Black?
Right.
And I was hurt. I had no idea. In the meantime, Sandy, the NU coach, is kind of sitting in the back going, and smiling softly because she saw that she knew people weren't talking to me because they didn't know I was a senior. And she was softly recruiting other people. She never spoke to me there because we had spoken before. And then she had said specifically, I'll speak to you when you get back home from Nashville. I don't want to disturb you while you're competing.
Right. She didn't want nobody else talking, right?
Clever, right? So anyway, those were interesting times.
That is amazing. So then you stayed 2 years, right?
Yeah, 2 years.
2 years. Now, what made you think you could make it, right? I mean, that was in the day, right? Now you see a lot of college players, obviously using the time to mature. But for a while, college was like the death sentence to a pro career. So what happened in your second year that made you say, all right, I'm ready to go pro. I can make it?
Yeah, so it was also a time for me, I didn't really understand what going pro was, right? Again, I'm from the hood on the west side. I wasn't into all of that stuff. I played because I love the game. I love to compete. I was a competitor. I love to compete. And so after my freshman year, I never gave it a thought that I would turn pro. It was in the second year, but I was playing the pro circuit tournaments in the summer, and I was getting a WTA ranking, and my ranking was going up, every week, every month, because I was doing well. Not winning tournaments. I was winning doubles, but not so much in the singles yet. In my sophomore year, I started winning more matches in the pro circuit. My singles ranking was going up because I was playing a couple tournaments during the school year when we had breaks. But I went to Houston my Christmas break and did preseason with Zena and Lori before they went their preseason for Australia. They invited me to come down and train with them. And I almost died like the first 2 or 3 days. I didn't know what it felt like to actually train properly. We didn't go to the gym at Northwestern. We didn't run. We did the little agility stuff on the court, the suicides and stuff like that. But we weren't really training, right?
Right.
Not like they do today. I'm getting out there and I'm playing in 90-degree heat, 90% humidity with Lori and Zena, and I'm just dying. I'm getting my ass kicked daily. And then, Willis and John made me go run the bayou with Lori. Lori runs like a horse. She can run all freaking day long. I'm passing out. I'm throwing up. I'm doing all these things. Anyways, fast forward a week, 10 days. I'm in hella shape. I got hella confidence. I'm down here balling with these 2 top 10 players, in the world. And I come back to school like, yo, what you got? Y'all ain't got nothing for me.
Right.
And I'm kicking ass. It's now like in January and we have tryouts for position and you're playing your challenge matches. And I kick everybody. I think I beat the one that was playing number 3. I think I beat her 0-0. That it was just I was just a completely different player and mindset and physically different. And so, Zena and Laura are like, yo, man, why are you in school? Why are you not on tour? Why are you not this? Why are you not that? I'm like, cause I'm in college. Now, Lori went to college. Lori played at Oklahoma State. She went for 2 years. So in the back of my mind, I had already planned that I was going to go to school for 2 years. This was kind of early, said early on in some goal setting I had. So my freshman year was never a thought. As I'm progressing in my sophomore year, I'm doing really well. We win the NCAA doubles. My partner, Diane Donnelly, and I were undefeated. We didn't lose a match that year. I'm beating players that I know are going pro. I'm like, yeah, I'm ready. I was beating them in singles. So I would have been returning number 3 ranked in singles, number 1 in doubles. And I'm like, there's nothing more competitive here for me to accomplish outside of winning the NCAA singles. So I gave it a go. I played the circuit all summer. I took the fall quarter off at NU as an amateur. I had a conversation with the AD, the assistant AD, and our coach to allow me to play through the fall as an amateur because, you're used to playing all summer long. Right. Week in and week out. And then you got back to some normalcy. Well, I didn't know if I was going to like to play week in and week out year round. Didn't know how I was going to compete mentally, physically, what have you. I did really well in the fall. I got my ranking up in December to like 104. I was a direct entry into the Australian Open. Now it's time to turn pro. Right? You turn pro when you get in the main draw of Grand Slam.
Main draw of Slam.
Not playing the
25s and
Right. That's not when you turn pro for me. And so that's really how the process happened and how I got to where I did.
That is crazy. So you brought up Zena Garrison. Now, when you turn pro back then, right? Like now, industry comes and tells you should turn pro. Nike gives you an advance, New Balance gives you an advance, it go whatever, $500,000, whatever, jumpstart, right? That wasn't happening necessarily back then.
I got nothing.
Right. So you kind of gotta like bunk up in the room, travel on somebody else's dime, pick a free meal here, get a free meal here and there. How did you, I know you like shared a room with Zena, some tournaments, bunked up with folks. How did that go? How did you finance your career early on?
Yeah, my parents did pretty much. And listen, my parents were teachers. They weren't millionaires by no means. And my dad sacrificed every week, every day, every week. He and my mom sacrificed and made it work for me. So, my initial travels, my first big trip was to Australia. That wasn't cheap, but it went on their credit card. They figured out a way to pay for it, the first quarter. But in December, and this is another reason that preempted me to turn pro, I guess when the entry list came out, Willis Thomas, who was coaching Zena Garrison at the time, called me on her behalf and asked if I would be interested in playing doubles with Zena in Australia. What? What? Fast forward, I'm like, oh my God. And so I'm like, hell yeah, absolutely. Now I'm like, okay, I'm in the main draw. I'm playing doubles with Zena Garrison, blah, 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 blah. A week later, Willis calls back and says, oh my gosh, I made a horrible mistake. I didn't realize that she had already committed to play with this other player. But she still wants to play doubles with you, but she can't play in Australia because she made this pre-commitment. But can you play in Boca, the Virginia Slams of Boca, which was like the first tournament that we played coming back. It was in February. And so I was like, okay, that's fine. I found another partner, Penny Barg, who I'd played in college. She went to UCLA. She was a top player. You know, we won 3 rounds. I think we got to the round of 16, maybe 2 rounds, whatever it was, round of 16 in doubles. But part of that relationship and conversation from Willis was that Zena had offered for me to use him as a coach. So I would be sharing the services. She was a priority, but he was going to make sure that he had time with me. And so that I didn't have to pay him what that normal rate would be. I pay him something, but didn't have to pay him full rate because she was already compensating him. Zena would share rooms with me to take the burden off of having my own expenses, because back then we didn't get free hotel rooms. Right. And so that's how that started. And I think we shared a room for probably a year. We played doubles for the first 3 years. We definitely shared the first year in particular because she got married that second year. So that's how I was able to make it. You know, the tournaments had food on site. I ate on site whenever possible. And that's how I got started. I didn't have the sponsor, the financial sponsor, or the apparel or, you know, equipment sponsor that gave me advances to get me going like these kids do today.
So Willis Thomas is a legend in the game. So I remember when I first met Willis, Zena obviously introduced me. She's been great about connecting people, making sure that people from generations of the past are staying connected. You know, Willis really soft-spoken. He walk up to you real soft, quiet, and, you know, he start, how's it going? You know, it could be rough, you know, but like, you know, Willis, he said, Zena fired me 5 times, you know.
That's true.
I tell her something she don't want to hear. She fired me, and then she called me back, and he said, Kamau, you ain't been fired yet. You're not a real coach till you get fired, you know. He was, I was like, well, you know what? So now, you Willis, I can say,
you're a real coach, dog.
I've been fired and hired by the same person 3 times now. So
that's what I'm saying. You're a real
coach. I'm a real coach now. Well, I mean, Willis was just a breadth of knowledge, you know, in terms of like how to deal with not only coaching, but coaching people who are your boss, right? Because the player's the boss. Y'all paying the bill. Yep. You know what I mean? We're guiding you, right, in the right direction. But at the end of the day, you can just say, off. You know what I mean? Or be quiet. You know, he'd be like, he'd say, come out. Had they ever told you to shut up yet? I'm like, yeah, I've gotten a couple times where the player tells me you're talking too much. Just stand there and pick up the ball. So I'm like, I've gotten that. He's okay, okay, you coaching now, right?
Yeah. No, Willis and I had some doozies back in the day. He said, you know, he'd tell me to do something, I cuss him out, right, and turn around and do what he just told me to do. Right. But you know, we had a great relationship, and I think it was the good thing for me. I think, you know, having that Black coach coming out as a rookie, as a 19-year-old. He was a little older, so I had respect for him in that regard as an older Black man. And you know how we were raised. And my parents had told me early on, don't do anything stupid. You know, you remain respectful and honorable and blah, blah, blah. And so, I mean, you know, Willis and I to this day have a great relationship, but he was soft-spoken, but he could you know, raise his eyebrow and get you to do what needed to be done. And so I was very grateful for that relationship for him. He lived in Miami at the time. So in my off, you know, particularly my rookie year, whenever I was off the tour, I go to Miami. I come home for a couple of days and go down there and get ready for the next tournament. I almost moved to Miami. I ended up moving to Houston. But it was great having that Black coach that you felt that you could relate to. He could relate to me, my upbringing, my family values, etc. And so I think that was critical in how I entered the professional realm of the sport.
Yeah, I always say, if you think about sort of the Grand Slam champion since, the year 2000, American Grand Slam champion, you got Lindsay, you got Venus, Serena, Sloane, uh, Osaka. You want to, she's
Canon.
American, right? So you always
Yeah.
have like that black coach who was present, right? Richard,
Right.
Walter Johnson for, Althea and Arthur. And I said there's value in translation, because that person can say stuff a little rough when you need to hear it without sort of tiptoeing around the issue, right? And it takes it differently. So that speaks to
Understanding culture, right? We understand our culture and how we relate to one another, if you will. Some people may say, hey, that's kind of rude, or that's aggressive or assertive, but it's understanding your culture and how you're raised and how you kind of, talk to one another.
Yeah. So you talk about, one of the things that's always impressed me is when you became USTA president, right? And they was like, oh, that's because she went to Northwestern. She's got that, semi Ivy League pedigree, blah, 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 blah. I'm thinking, that's not it. I'm like, that's because she has had to navigate. She navigated from the West Side into tennis to Whitney Young to Northwestern to the Pro Tour. I mean, part of corporate America, and I worked for corporate America for 13 years, right? Part of that is just being able to just navigate, represent yourself, foster relationships. Tell me how you got from being a former player, without sort of lineage in the sport, right? When you look at like Tennis Channel, WTA, there's a lot of lineage, right? People who have some of these positions are the son of somebody or the cousin of somebody, et cetera. But you didn't have any of that. Yours is like total breakthrough. Talk about how you built that path to become CEO of the USTA.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good question. And it stems back to being first that professional tennis player and learning how to network and build relationships, but also earn respect from others and show that you are accountable and responsible in your actions. I was on the WTA Players Association board my rookie or sophomore year, and I was on the board for about 10 years of that career, which elevated up to the WTA Tour board when they integrated. Um, and so I kind of had those relationships and that business sense in the boardroom and understanding and learning about our sport. So when I retired, I actually became a USA national coach, when we were based in Key Biscayne, and then they had some reshuffling. I stopped working after about 4 years, and I started commentating. But I got invited to apply to the board of the USTA, which I was nominated as an elite athlete. Elite athlete is within 10 years of retirement if you were of a certain level, top 50 in the nation, of which I was. And once I got on the board, I kind of, because I knew nothing about the USTA outside of I played USTA tournaments, I had a ranking, they ran the US Open. I didn't know anything about the business side, the grassroots side, or anything like that. I knew I played on USTA national teams, the USTA college team. So I knew it from a competitive perspective, but not what its mission was. And I was a volunteer on a committee prior to being nominated to the board, where I went to an annual meeting and was around 1,000 other volunteers. I was like, wow, who are these people? So I learned about their passion for the sport, what they did for the sport, and how I was a beneficiary of a lot of the work that they did through all of the programs that USA offered. So then I got interested. I got on the board. I started to learn more. I got even more interested. And in that process of kind of elevating through the board, it was really the things that I had learned, seen, heard. I was like, you know what? I can do this. You know what? I want to be the VP, which is a whole nother step. And about 6 years in, I finally, or 8 years in probably, I got nominated to be the VP. And once I became an officer, then I truly realized that they respected the value that I brought, because I was the first former athlete to be an officer of the USTA. That was huge. And that was in 2011 as a VP. And then I moved up to be first VP, et cetera. So through that process, it was really about having my eyes wide open at all times, having my ears all open at all times, and having my feet to the ground at all times, because you just never know what was coming your way, and who was throwing things your way to throw you off balance, if you will. And so
Yes.
that's how I navigated all of that, and ultimately became the president, chairman, and CEO.
And the youngest CEO in the history of the sport, and the only one to get 2 terms. So how did you get your second term? Everyone's like, oh,
Yeah,
she
so
did such a great job.
let's go back to the youngest first, because I think that's critical. You know, when you look at how the USTA was over the years, most of our past presidents were retired, and they had all the time in the world to now dedicate to that role,
And
right?
made their money. They made their
They'd
money.
already made their money because it was a volunteer role now.
Right.
True
People
volunteers,
don't
you
know
don't
that.
get paid for this.
People don't know that.
I did not get paid CEO money, just so you know. Let's be clear about that. Though I had the title. And so me coming in, I broke the mold in so many different ways, because I was fortunate enough, I was running the Harlem Junior Tennis and Education Program. I was commentating, I was doing clinics. I was doing a lot of things in the sport, but I had the time to commit to the larger role of the USTA, thanks to my board of directors in Harlem, and understanding that, this could be history, it could be historical. I could add value to the USTA, but I could also add value back to my program by being in that role. And so, all the marbles fell in place. And so that was the youngest, but being the first former player was huge, because people think that because you play a sport that you don't understand business, or that you don't have experience in business. Like you said, you worked in corporate America for 13 years. You haven't always been that tennis coach that you are now, right? Played tennis, you coach, but it wasn't to the level where you are now. And so people take us for granted for our knowledge base and our experience. And so that was a challenge, just to kind of get past that and navigate, for people to respect me as that leader. And then I got the second term for 2 reasons. My first VP, who was to ascend, couldn't do it. And they could have easily gone to the VP and elevated him at the time, or they could have gone out and gotten someone else. But they felt that I had done such a great job, and I was so positive for the organization and the things that I had in place, that I should be reappointed. And that's how it happened. So I was grateful for that opportunity. It was a shock to my system, because it's a lot of work. And I tell you, at the end of that second year, I was ready to take a breather and just exhale, when I had to get it back in high gear again, and go full force. But it was a great experience, a great opportunity. Of course, I'm in the highlights for all of these accolades of the first, but it's my job to make sure I'm not the last. And so that's what I continue to do, is to inspire others and inspire others, empower and inspire others to be their best selves, so that they too can be in this role.
But it's also a lot of sacrifice. And I don't want to gloss over that, because I think when we think about leadership, whether it's, like the volunteer position, political figures, you're probably the first, right? Or probably your bank account probably was the smallest of any past president, right?
Yeah.
Prior to getting that. And so, yes, it's great, but it's also a lot of personal sacrifice. So how did you navigate through that, right? Because some of the other past presidents, they may have had a business connected to tennis, or they had like a full sort of operation, and maybe this supported that, or added a little sauce on to what they were already doing in the sport. You know what I mean? But you were like, well, now I got to stop working, and I got to still fund myself. And I look at your time as Katrina took one for the team, because if it was not you at that time, it would have been a long time before it was anybody else, right? And I think
Hasn't happened yet.
you understood the significance of we got to make some progress for Black folks in tennis, right? In addition to what Venus and Serena were doing on the court, we got to make more process just in terms of decision making and influence and growing the sport. That's total taking one from the team. So how did you live? You know what I mean? And how did that position to what you're doing now?
Yeah, I mean, it was a huge sacrifice, but it was also, I don't do anything if I don't feel I can't make a difference. And so that was that taking one for the team, if you will. I never looked at it that way. But in recognizing that this was the moment that I had to grab and I had to run with it. Listen, I have worked for all my life as a professional player and the jobs that I've had. So I had a little cushion, not a lot, but I still was able to do, my commentary whenever I was asked to do it. Probably did, I did some WTA finals and the French Open, and I wasn't able to do the US Open while I was in tenure because I had a job to do elsewhere. But, I did clinics. I did a lot of different things that helped support me financially to keep it going. And, really, at the end of the day, the expenses that I had were just my living expenses because I was on the road all the time. I mean, I was literally that spokesperson for the organization for 4 years, domestically and internationally. And so I was able to manage. I had people supporting me also, and that made a difference as well. So people got behind me, and knowing the sacrifice, as you say, was there in realizing that I had bigger and better things to do in this role, and that, on the back end, I would make up for it. And so I've been very fortunate.
Well, let me describe the sacrifice. So when I first got there on tour, I didn't play on tour, right? Didn't win no Grand Slam, didn't play in a Grand Slam, didn't play in a 25, right? So it's like, oh, you sit down at a bar with some of the other coaches from Germany, from Czech, from whatever, or even people from America, right, who have this lineage. And then they challenge you, right? And I always used to be like, Katrina's my big sis. Oh, do you know Katrina Adams? Yeah, we ate Thanksgiving dinner together a week ago. You know what I mean? And that was able to get people off me, right? So I think when I think about three people in the sport that sort of made my transition, I won't say smooth, but gave me a layer of protection, it would be you, Billy, and Zena. They knew I had three prominent people to call if you got out of hand. You know what I mean? If I couldn't handle it myself, like, all right, keep with me, right? You know what I mean? Just keep.
Right.
I got a few people I can call that you have some influence. So, back off, right? Kind of thing. So I've had to use that card a couple. So that's what I mean about sacrifice, taking one for the team. You know what I mean? And so many people have benefited from that. And then so now you're in the next phase of your career. Fantastic public speaker, by the way. And I mean fantastic.
Thank you.
An author. Tell us about the book and where you found time to do it. I mean, damn, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. So I never had a desire to write a book. It's not something that I said that's going to be the next thing I do. But I had a lot of people that kept hounding me, literally probably 2 years before I even agreed to write a book. They said, Kat, you have so much to offer. People can learn from your experiences as a leader, and you really do need to write a book and write about your experiences. Because I'm thinking, I'm not writing an autobiography. I'm like, no, nobody's interested in my life. That's the way I was looking at it. And so towards the end of my tenure in 2018, I was having more and more conversations with people, and I had a literary agent that, she was just on me and trying to get me to commit to doing it. And I finally said, okay, yes, let's do it, because we talked about it being a leadership book. And so that was more interesting to me because, as I said earlier, I can be the first. I've been the first of a lot of things, but I never want to be the last, because that means I'm not doing my job to reach back and pull forward for the next person. So the book is called Own the Arena. I had given it the title Own the Room because everyone always says, Kat, when you walk into the room, you own it. There is no doubt that when you walk in, everybody looks, or you just have this air of confidence. And so the publisher actually changed it to arena. They're like, no, you're bigger than a room. You're, everywhere you go, it's your arena. And it's also a play on words from sport, right? In the arenas that we play in. And so that was cool. And then the subtitle is getting ahead, making a difference, and succeeding as the only one. So I really focus on what it means to be the only one in the room, in a boardroom, either as the only woman or the only Black person or only person of color, to that extent. And I have these 12 winning match points: own the table, own your voice, own your courage, own your identity, all these different things that are parallels with the 12 chapters that I write about. And so it's kind of a present story that and a reflection on the things that I did in my past that prepared me for these particular moments and experiences that I had, and challenges and successes. And so I've had a great time going around the country doing speaking engagements to different corporations about the book. But it's not so much about the book as much as it is tailoring to the company's needs and what the messages that they want delivered or want to hear. But there's a lot that translates and correlates from the book to anybody's business, and understanding growth and development as a person, and understanding diversity of thought. And I think that's the biggest thing for me, is you have to have diversity of thought in any conversation to succeed. And that diversity of thought is gender-based, is ethnicity-based, is race-based. It's all of those things that play a role into being successful.
So how can people connect with you? Because diversity of thought is what you bring. You bring a ton of experience in a, when I say very, very good old boys network type of room, you successfully navigated that. You need to be on the board of Starbucks and Chase. You need. So how do people connect with you to put you on their boards? Because I feel that if you're in that room, then people like me and the people that I'm in front of every day will be represented. So how can people connect with you to get?
No, thank you. But thank you. So I have a website. It's kat@KatrinaMAdams.com. That's KAT at Katrina M for Michelle, Adams.com. Or you can email me directly at kat@KatrinaMAdams.com for those conversations. But on my website, you can contact my speakers bureau to if you're interested in me coming to speak at at your conference, at your meeting. I spoke at a realtors convention a couple weeks ago. I know nothing about real estate, but they wanted me to come and talk about DE&I. I'm like, yeah, that's an easy one. But just figuring out how it relates to the audience, to the topic at hand. And it's something I enjoy doing. And so thank you.
Well, thank you for coming on. You always have my back. I appreciate you for your journey, your path. I know it wasn't easy, although you be taking it with a smile and you never let the stress show on your face. I know it wasn't easy, but we appreciate you. I want to thank you for coming on to the show. This has been the Tennis.com podcast with Big Sis, former CEO of the USTA, not once, but twice, author, former pro tennis player, one of the best doubles players of all time, got the best hands of anybody that's left the city of Chicago, other than Donald Young and Taylor Townsend. All three of y'all got that. Yeah, right? And author of Own the Arena. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.